Robert Smith was 45 years old. 8 months unemployed, 3 failed businesses, debts that seemed like insurmountable mountains. His calloused mechanic hands trembled not from the dawn cold, but from the shame he felt watching Luke, his 19-year-old son, trying to hide his disappointment. But here's the paradox that will shock you. Robert's greatest failure became the greatest gift he could give his son. In 12 months, Luke broke the family curse and became the first millionaire in the Smith family. How? Through a secret his failed father discovered during his sleepless nights studying vibrational frequency and financial manifestation. Hi, I'm Charlie, presenter of this story that will revolutionize your perspective on failure, success, and the energy we transmit to future generations. What you'll discover here isn't just about financial prosperity. It's about transforming your greatest defeats into the most powerful legacy you can leave. The truth is, Robert didn't fail 3 times. He studied 3 times how not to do it. And this subtle difference in perception completely changed Luke's life course. If you've ever felt like a failure, if you feared not being able to set the right example for your children, or if you simply want to understand how to break family cycles of financial scarcity, prepare for a profound transformation. This story will prove it's never too late to be the mentor your children need, even if you think you've already lost that chance. Robert discovered that wisdom doesn't come from success. It comes from consciousness about failures. And this consciousness became the key to Luke's financial abundance. Prepare to begin your energetic transformation, and start by exercising gratitude for this video appearing to you exactly now. For this, I kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. If you don't like it at the end, just unlike it. Let's begin this journey of spiritual awakening and prosperity that can change generations. Robert Smith, widowed with a son to raise, left that company with shaky legs and a broken heart. It was the 17th interview in 8 months. The same question echoed in his mind. Why couldn't I get the job again? What's wrong with me? The interviewer's words still burned like acid. Robert, your resume shows too much instability. 3 failed businesses, 2 layoffs due to budget cuts. Frankly, you seem to be a man who attracts financial problems. That phrase haunted him during the entire trip home. On the crowded bus, observing other men his age with equally tired expressions, Robert wondered if they all carried the same invisible weight he felt in his chest. Arriving home, he found Luke studying at the kitchen table. The 19-year-old looked up hopefully, but quickly noticed his father's defeated expression. They didn't need to exchange words. Luke simply lowered his head and returned to his books, pretending not to notice his father's despair. Robert went upstairs to his room, sat on the edge of the bed, and, for the first time in years, allowed himself to cry. Not just a few silent tears, but deep, desperate sobbing that came from a very dark place in his soul. There, alone in that modest room, Robert felt as if he was reliving a scene he knew all too well. At age 8, he had witnessed his father, John Smith, crying in exactly the same way. John was a truck driver and had lost his job when the trucking company closed. Robert remembered perfectly the words his father shouted that night. "This world wasn't made for people like us. Rich stay rich, poor stay poor. That's how it is and always will be." Robert's mother, Mary, a seamstress who worked late into the night, only confirmed with her energy of resignation. "There's no point in dreaming big, Robert. People of our class can't want more than the basics. Everything is expensive. Money doesn't stretch. We have to save even on essentials." Robert closed his eyes and could hear his mother's voice echoing through the house again. "We're not buying that. It's too expensive. These shoes have to last all year. Rich people are thieves, son. Those who have a lot of money took it from those who don't. Money doesn't bring happiness. It brings problems." For more than 3 decades, these phrases had been the soundtrack of Robert's life. And in that moment of emotional collapse, a devastating realization hit him like lightning. He had become a perfect copy of his parents. How many times had Luke heard Robert complain that all businessmen are thieves? How many times had the boy witnessed his father saying that money only comes with great suffering? How many times had Robert repeated, without realizing that life is hard, period? Robert remembered reading a few months earlier a book by Joe Dispenza about neuroplasticity, where the author explained how family patterns repeat through generations because we literally mold our brains with the same beliefs our parents carried. We don't just inherit genes, Dispenza said. We inherit emotional states, thought patterns, and vibrational frequencies. There, sitting on that bed, Robert had the most painful and liberating insight of his life. He wasn't just repeating his parents' financial failure. He was programming Luke for the same destiny. Every complaint about money, every sigh of resignation, every comment about life being difficult were seeds of scarcity being planted in his son's subconscious. Robert remembered a conversation that had happened the previous week. Luke mentioned wanting to create an online business, and Robert's first reaction was, "That's for rich kids, son. People like us have to work with our hands, the traditional way." The words came out automatically, as if his father was speaking through him. The neuroscience Robert had studied in recent months finally made sense. Dr. Bruce Lipton, in the book The Biology of Belief, explained that 95% of our decisions come from the subconscious programmed by age 7. Robert had spent his entire life operating with the mental software from the 1980s, when the American economy was in crisis and his parents struggled to survive. But something even more shocking was waiting for Robert that night of revelation. When he went downstairs to drink water, he found Luke still studying, but this time with headphones on. Curious, Robert approached discreetly and saw that his son was watching videos about financial manifestation and personal development. Luke noticed his father's presence and quickly closed the laptop, with an expression of someone caught doing something forbidden. In that moment, Robert understood something devastating. His own son had already identified the scarcity environment he created at home and was seeking alternatives to protect himself from this destructive energy. "Dad," Luke said with a maturity that surprised Robert, "I know you're going through difficulties, but I can't live in this frequency of it won't work. There's no way life is just like this anymore. I love you, but I need to protect my mind from these beliefs." Robert felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. His 19-year-old son had developed more spiritual and financial consciousness than he had at 45. Luke already understood that thoughts create reality. That energy attracts similar experiences, that the house's vibrational frequency directly influenced his possibilities for financial abundance. That dawn, Robert made the most important decision of his life. He couldn't save his own financial situation anymore. The patterns were too ingrained. But he could do something infinitely more valuable. Use his failures as a wisdom laboratory to teach Luke exactly how not to vibrate at scarcity frequency. Robert realized his mission was no longer to seek personal success, but to break the family curse that had been repeating for generations. He would be the last Smith to die poor, not because he would get rich, but because he would teach his son how to escape the mental prison that had trapped 3 generations of the family. And so, with tears still streaming down his face, Robert began writing in an old notebook everything he had learned about how the mind works, how beliefs are formed, and how family patterns can be broken. But what he didn't know yet was that this decision to become his own son's mentor would be exactly what was missing for his own energetic transformation. The next morning, Robert woke up with a strange feeling in his chest. It wasn't hope. It was too early for that. It was something more subtle, purpose. For the first time in months, he had a clear mission that went beyond getting a job or paying bills. Luke was having breakfast when Robert came down to the kitchen. The atmosphere between them was different since the previous night's conversation. There was raw honesty in the air, as if they could finally stop pretending everything was okay. "Son," Robert began, pouring himself coffee with hands that still trembled slightly. I need to tell you something I discovered last night. Something that could completely change our family's direction. Luke looked up from the business administration book he was reading. There was skepticism there, but also curiosity. Dad, with all due respect, how can you teach me about success if I'm a failure? Robert completed the sentence with a bitter smile. That's exactly why I can teach you, Luke. I know exactly why I failed. And knowing the causes of failure is the first step to success. Robert pulled up a chair and sat facing his son. Do you know the difference between a scientist who does 1,000 experiments that go wrong and one who gives up on the first try? Luke closed the book, intrigued. The one who doesn't give up. No. The difference is that the scientist who persists understands that each failed experiment is actually valuable data about how not to do it. I didn't fail 3 times, Luke. I collected data on 3 different ways the scarcity mindset sabotages any attempt at prosperity. Robert got up and went to the drawer where he kept his study notebooks. He returned with a notebook full of notes on neuroscience, quantum physics, and personal development. For the last 2 years, while my businesses failed, I obsessively studied why some people manage to create financial abundance and others, like our family, get trapped in cycles of scarcity. And I discovered something that will shock you. Luke leaned forward, his initial resistance giving way to genuine curiosity. The problem was never lack of effort, son. I always worked hard. The problem was the vibrational frequency I worked in. Let me explain it in a way you'll understand. Robert opened the notebook to a page full of diagrams. You know the concept of frequency in physics, right? Everything in the universe vibrates at specific frequencies. Our thoughts and emotions are also energy, and they vibrate at frequencies that attract similar experiences. Dad, isn't that a bit too esoteric? Luke asked, but his body language showed interest. I thought the same thing until I discovered this has solid scientific basis. The HeartMath Institute in the United States proved that our emotional states create measurable electromagnetic fields that influence our reality. When you work with fear, anxiety, and scarcity thoughts, you literally attract more situations that confirm those fears. Robert turned the page and showed a graph he had drawn. Look, my first business, the auto repair shop. I opened it because I was desperate to quit my job. I worked 14 hours a day, but my mind was always focused on what could go wrong. What if no customers show up? What if the competition breaks me? What if I can't pay rent? And what happened? Luke asked, genuinely interested now. Exactly what I feared. Few customers, lots of competition, difficulty paying bills. I was vibrating at the frequency of fear and lack, so the universe delivered more fear and lack, Robert continued. The second business, the parts store. Same story. I worked hard, but my energy was always focused on survival, never on abundance. I served customers thinking, I need to sell this to pay the electric bill, not, how can I add value to this person's life? Luke slowly shook his head. That makes sense. I noticed you were always tense, always worried about money, even when things were going well. Exactly. And here's the insight that changed everything for me last night. Robert leaned forward, his eyes shining with an intensity Luke hadn't seen in years. I discovered that it's not failures that define our financial destiny. It's the vibrational frequency we choose after each fall. What do you mean? Think with me. When my first business failed, what was my reaction? Anger, revolt, feeling like the world is against me. When the second failed, more of the same. I was always vibrating at victim frequency of the person things happened to. Not through, Robert opened another page in the notebook. But yesterday, studying financial manifestation, I read something by Napoleon Hill that made me understand everything. He said, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. I never looked for those seeds. Luke, I just lamented the adversity. And now you found the seeds? I found something better. I found the pattern. All my failures have one thing in common. I always acted from fear, need, The energy of I need this to work or I'll die. That's scarcity frequency. And it's like a magnet for more scarcity. Robert stood up and began walking around the kitchen, his energy visibly changing. But there's another frequency, Luke. Abundance frequency. It's when you act from inspiration, from certainty that the universe is abundant and there's room for everyone to prosper. It's when you work to add value, not just to survive. Okay, but how does this apply in practice? Luke asked, grabbing a pen to take notes. Great question. Let me give you a concrete example. Robert sat down again. Remember Mr. Johnson, who has that shop on the street above? He started at the same time as me with less money, less experience. Today he has 3 shops and a comfortable financial life. I remember. I always found it strange he did so well. I did too, until I understood the difference. Mr. Johnson never worked with fear. When a customer arrived, he didn't think, I need to sell this service to pay bills. He thought, how can I solve this guy's problem in the best way possible? See the difference in energy? Luke nodded, taking notes. One is focused on his own need, the other on the value he can offer. Exactly. And here's the secret I want to teach you. Financial success isn't about working harder. It's about working at the right frequency. It's about aligning your action with abundance energy, not scarcity. Robert opened a specific page in the notebook. I studied dozens of cases of people who went from poverty to wealth. They all have one thing in common. At some point they stopped acting from fear and started acting from inspiration and certainty that they deserve prosperity. Dad, Luke said slowly, you're telling me your failures were actually a laboratory to discover how the mind works? Robert smiled for the first time in months. Not just that, son. I'm saying every failure taught me exactly how not to vibrate. And now I can teach you to vibrate at the right frequency from the beginning. Luke closed his eyes for a moment, processing everything. When he opened them, there was something different there. Dad, you didn't fail. You were studying to teach me. Robert felt deep emotion rise in his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a failure. He felt like a mentor who had paid a high price to acquire valuable wisdom. So are you ready to learn how to break our family's scarcity cycle? Robert asked. I'm ready, Luke replied, and for the first time in months, father and son looked at each other with genuine hope. But Robert knew teaching theory was just the beginning. The real challenge would be showing Luke how to apply these principles in practice. Especially when all family programming screamed that people like them didn't deserve financial abundance. 3 days after that transformative conversation, Robert called Luke for a session that would forever change the Smith family's energetic trajectory. It was Sunday afternoon, and the house was silent, the perfect moment for what Robert called family spiritual surgery. Son, today we're going to do something our family has never done in 3 generations. Robert said, spreading papers and old photos on the living room table. We're going to map and break the scarcity patterns that have been transmitted from father to son like a cursed inheritance. Luke observed the photos of grandparents and great-grandparents he barely knew. Dad, how does this work exactly? How do patterns transmit through generations? Robert opened a Bruce Lipton book he had bought the previous week. Science has already proven we don't just inherit physical characteristics. We also inherit emotional patterns, beliefs, and even traumas. It's called epigenetics. Our genes are influenced by our ancestors' experiences and emotions. Does this mean I was born programmed to be poor? Luke asked with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Not programmed, conditioned. But conditioning can be broken. Robert picked up a photo of his own father. Look, I'll tell you the complete story of our financial lineage. My grandfather, your great-grandfather Anthony, was a farmer. He lost everything in the drought of 1958 and died repeating, God gives the cold according to the blanket. Poor people have to be content with little, Robert continued, picking up another photo. My father, John, grew up hearing this. He became a truck driver and, even when he earned well, lived in fear of losing everything. He said, You can't save money because an emergency always appears to take it away. And guess what? It always appeared. Why did it always appear? Luke asked, intrigued. Because he vibrated at the frequency of expectation of loss. The subconscious mind works 24 hours a day to confirm our deepest beliefs. If you believe something always appears to take money away, your subconscious will create situations that confirm this belief. Robert stood up and went to the window. I grew up hearing my father say, rich people are thieves, that money doesn't bring happiness, that those who have a lot took from those who have little. These phrases were engraved in my subconscious as absolute truths, and you passed that to me. Luke completed, without accusation, just observation. Exactly. And here's what's most frightening. I passed it to you not just with words, but with energy. Children absorb more the vibrational frequency of parents than their words. You grew up feeling my anxiety about money, my fear of not having enough, my belief that life is hard. Robert returned to the table and picked up a blank sheet. But today this changes. We're going to do a genealogical reprogramming exercise I learned studying Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. How does it work? First, we'll identify all the limiting beliefs about money our family has carried for generations. Then, we'll consciously choose new beliefs and start vibrating in them until they become our new programming. Robert began writing on the sheet. Smith family limiting beliefs about money. Bellow. Hard work is the only honest way to earn money. Those who have a lot took from those who have little. Can't dream big, life is hard. Period. Luke looked at the list and felt a shiver. Dad, I recognize all these phrases. Some I've even said, normal. They've been in our energetic DNA for 3 generations. But now we're going to create our new programming. Robert turned the sheet and wrote, New Smith family beliefs about financial abundance. Father and son worked together to create the new list. I deserve financial abundance because I'm a divine being. Money is energy that flows freely when I vibrate at the correct frequency. The more value I add to the world, the more prosperity I receive. My family broke the scarcity cycle forever. Now comes the most important part. Robert said, it's not enough to just write these beliefs. We need to feel them, vibrate in them, until they become our new energetic reality. Robert explained the exercise. We're going to do a genealogical reprogramming meditation. First, we'll connect energetically with our ancestors and thank them for everything they taught us, including about scarcity. Then, we'll consciously choose a new path for our lineage. Father and son sat comfortably, closed their eyes, and Robert guided the meditation. Breathe deeply. Luke, imagine a golden light entering through the top of your head and filling your entire body. Now visualize our ancestors, Grandpa John, Great-Grandpa Anthony, and all others who came before. See them at peace, understanding they did their best with the consciousness they had. Robert continued. Now say mentally, I honor you and thank you for all teachings, including about scarcity. But today I consciously choose to break this pattern. I choose abundance for myself and all generations that will come after me. For 20 minutes, father and son remained in this meditation, feeling a liberation energy neither had experienced before. Luke later reported feeling as if invisible chains were being broken around his chest. When they opened their eyes, Robert taught Luke practical techniques to vibrate at abundance frequency daily. Technique 1. The morning abundance ritual every day upon waking, before even getting out of bed. You'll repeat 3 times. I am a magnet for financial opportunities. Today the universe conspires in my favor. But don't just speak, feel the truth of these words vibrating in your chest. Technique 2. Anticipated financial gratitude during the day. Whenever you think about money, instead of focusing on what's missing, think for what's coming. Say, thank you for the abundance already on its way. This changes your frequency from lack to positive expectation. Technique 3. Added value. Visualization before any activity that might generate Technique 4. Observed abundance exercise. Every time you see someone prosperous, instead of feeling envy or thinking, they must have stolen, say mentally, what a blessing to see abundance manifesting. If it's possible for them, it's possible for me too. Technique 5. Spending reprogramming. When spending money, even on basic necessities, say, I invest this financial energy with joy, knowing it returns multiplied. This transforms the act of spending from loss to energetic investment. Luke practiced each technique right there, and Robert observed something extraordinary. His son's posture visibly changed. His shoulders straightened, his breathing became deeper, and there was a different light in his eyes. Dad, Luke said with an emotional voice, for the first time in my life, I feel I can have a different financial destiny from our family history. Robert felt tears in his eyes. Son, you not only can, you will, and you know why. Because now you have something no Smith has had before. Consciousness about how the mind works and practical tools to reprogram your vibrational frequency. In that moment, father and son hugged, and both felt something profound had changed in the house's energy. It was as if generations of ancestors were finally at peace, knowing the scarcity cycle had been broken. But Robert knew reprogramming was just the first step. Now he needed to teach Luke how to transform this new vibrational frequency into practical actions that would generate concrete financial results. 2 weeks after the genealogical reprogramming session, Robert observed Luke with a mixture of pride and surprise. The young man had changed not just internally, but his energy radiated a confidence Robert had never seen before. It was as if Luke had finally given himself permission to dream big. Dad, Luke said one Tuesday morning, I understand the theory about vibrational frequency and belief reprogramming, but how does this transform into real money? How do I go from mental abundance to financial abundance? Robert smiled. It was exactly the question he was expecting. Son, that's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. I always knew these things, studied for years about manifestation, law of attraction, neuroscience. My shelf is full of books about prosperity. Then why didn't it work for you? Luke asked with genuine curiosity, without judgment. Robert took a deep breath. It was time for a painful but necessary confession, because I studied these techniques trying to save my own financial life. And when you're desperate, when you need something to work to survive, you contaminate manifestation energy with lack frequency. Robert stood up and went to his bookshelf, picking up several underlined and annotated books. Look at this. The Secret. Think and Grow Rich. You can heal your life, breaking the habit of being yourself. I read them all, did all exercises, but always with the energy of, this needs to work or I'll die. And now it's different, completely different. Now I don't need it to work for me. I've already accepted that my mission in this life is to be the mentor who breaks the family cycle. This acceptance freed me from pressure, and when you don't have pressure, you can see things with total clarity. Robert opened a new notebook he had started writing. In recent days, studying specifically to teach you, I finally understood the difference between desperate action and inspired action. And this difference is what will transform your financial. Explain better, Luke said, grabbing his own pen to take notes. Desperate action is when you act from fear, need, the energy of, I need this to work. It's how I always acted. I opened businesses because I was desperate to quit my job. I worked 14 hours because I was afraid of not being able to pay bills. Each action came from panic, not inspiration. Robert drew 2 diagrams in the notebook. Inspired action is completely different. It comes from certainty that you're aligned with your purpose, that the universe conspires in your favor, that you're adding genuine value to the world. It's action that flows, not action that forces. But how do I know if an action is inspired or desperate? Luke asked. Excellent question. Let me teach you the signs. Robert turned the page and began writing. Signs of desperate action. Constantly thinks, what if it doesn't work? Focuses more on what can be lost than what can be. Thinks in scarcity. If he wins, I lose. Signs of inspired action. You feel expansion and joy in your chest. You're certain you're on the right path. Focus on the value you can add. Feel you want to do it. Not that you need to. Think in abundance. There's room for everyone to prosper. Luke studied the list carefully. Dad, this makes a lot of sense. But how do I cultivate this inspired action energy in practice? Robert smiled. It was the million-dollar question. Here's the method I developed specifically for you, based on everything I studied. But now with the clarity that only comes when you're not desperate. The Smith method of inspired action. Step 1. Morning connection. Every day, before making any financial or professional decision, you'll do 10 minutes of meditation. Not to empty your mind, but to connect with your life mission. Ask yourself, how can I serve the world today in a way that brings me joy and abundance? Step 2. The expansion test. Before any important action, stop and feel your body. Does the idea make you feel expanded and excited or contracted and anxious? If it's contraction, it's desperate action. If it's expansion, it's inspired action. Step 3. The value question. Instead of asking, how much can I earn from this? Ask, how much value can I add with this? When you focus on the value you offer, money comes as a natural consequence. Step 4. Ideal result visualization. Before acting, visualize not just financial success, but the positive impact your action will have on people's lives. Feel their gratitude. Feel how you're contributing to a better world. Step 5. Action without attachment. Act with total commitment, but without attachment to results. Do your part with excellence and trust the universe will do its part. This is the difference between effort and flow. Luke practiced each step right there, and Robert observed a fascinating transformation. When Luke applied the expansion test, thinking about different career possibilities, his body literally changed posture when he mentioned creating digital content about personal development. Dad, when I think about helping other people our age break limiting family patterns, I feel incredible energy in my chest. It's like it's my mission. Robert felt a shiver. Son, you just discovered your purpose. And when you act from purpose, not desperation, the universe moves mountains to support you. In the following weeks, Robert taught Luke specific techniques to maintain inspired action frequency. The anticipated gratitude technique. Before any meeting, presentation, or business opportunity, thank in advance for the perfect result. Not the result you want, but the result that's best for everyone involved. The observed abundance exercise. Whenever you see someone prosperous, mentally celebrate their success. Say, how wonderful to see abundance manifesting. This inspires me and confirms there's enough prosperity for everyone. The daily contribution practice. Every day, do something that adds value to someone's life, even if small. It could be advice, a word of encouragement, useful content. This keeps you in service frequency, not need. What impressed Robert most was the speed with which Luke began attracting opportunities. In just 3 weeks applying the method, Luke was invited to give a lecture about breaking family patterns at a local university. The invitation came completely unexpectedly, through a professor who had seen Luke commenting about the subject on social media. Luke said, euphoric after the lecture. It happened exactly as you said. I wasn't trying to get anything, just sharing value. And opportunities started appearing naturally. Robert observed his son with a mixture of pride and revelation. For the first time in his life, he was seeing manifestation working in practice. Not because he was desperate for it to work, but because he was teaching someone he loved more than himself. You know what's most incredible, Luke? Seeing you apply these principles, I finally understood why it never worked for me. I was always trying to force the universe to give me what I thought I needed. You're allowing the universe to give you what's best for you. Luke hugged his father. Dad, you didn't fail. You were preparing to be the mentor I needed. Each of your failures was a lesson you were collecting to teach me. In that moment, Robert understood something profound. His true abundance wouldn't come through his own financial success, but through the success he was enabling Luke to achieve. And this realization filled him with a peace he had never experienced. But the real test was still to come. Luke needed to transform this new energy and knowledge into concrete and sustainable financial results in the real world. 6 months after the first transformative conversation between father and son, Luke was sitting in the same kitchen where everything began, but now with a laptop open and completely different energy. Robert watched his son work and could barely believe the transformation he was witnessing. "Dad, I need to show you something," Luke said, turning the computer screen to Robert. "Remember when you taught me about inspired action? Let me tell you the complete story of how I applied the Smith method of inspired action in practice. Remember when you taught me to ask the morning question, how can I serve the world today in a way that brings me joy and abundance? For 2 weeks, I asked this question religiously, and I always received the same intuitive answer. Help young people like me break limiting family patterns." Robert nodded, remembering that moment of discovery perfectly. "So I started small, exactly as you taught. I created an Instagram profile called @breaking_family_patterns and began sharing our story. Not to sell anything, just to add value." Luke showed the profile on his phone. 127,000 followers. Robert almost fell off his chair. "How did you get so many followers?" "Applying the daily contribution technique you taught me. Every day I posted useful content, how to identify inherited limiting beliefs, mental reprogramming exercises, stories of people who broke family cycles. I wasn't trying to sell anything, just serve." After 2 months, I started receiving messages from people asking for more personalized help. I applied the expansion test you taught me. When I thought about creating an online course about genealogical reprogramming, I felt that chest expansion you told me to pay attention to. Robert remembered teaching this technique. "And when did you feel contraction?" "When I thought about charging high prices just to make quick money. My body literally contracted. So I knew I had to do it differently." Luke opened another tab on the computer, showing his course sales page. "I created the course Genealogical Freedom, How to Break Family Patterns in 90 Days. But here's the differentiator. I didn't price thinking about how much I wanted to earn. I priced thinking about the value I was delivering." "What do you mean?" "Remember when you told me you spent over 15,000 on therapies Drentriers Trosper? It calculate Teflisteza Coer Sorer 497. It's expensive enough for people to value it, but accessible enough for those who really need it." Robert observed the sales numbers. 347 students in the first launch. "Son, how did you manage to sell so much right away?" "Applying the action without attachment technique you taught me. I created the best course I could with all love and dedication. Then, I simply offered it to my audience, without pressure, without desperation. I said, if this resonates with you, it'll be a pleasure to help you. If it doesn't resonate, keep following me and you'll always have valuable free content." Luke showed the comments on social media. Hundreds of testimonials from people thanking for the transformation they were experiencing. "Dad, you know when I knew I was on the right path? When a follower wrote to me saying she applied the course techniques and got her first job at 35. After breaking the family belief that women don't need to work outside." Robert felt tears in his eyes. "You're literally changing lives, son. And the most incredible thing, the more I focus on transforming lives, the more money appears naturally. It's exactly as you said, when you vibrate at service frequency, abundance comes as a consequence." After the first course's success, I applied the expansion test again to decide next steps. I felt expansion when I thought about creating more personalized mentoring for complex cases. Luke showed the mentoring page. VIP Genealogical Transformation, 12 weeks of individual coaching. Price, $3,997. "Dad, I was afraid to charge this amount. It seemed like too much money for someone from our family. But then I remembered what you taught me about vibrating at abundance frequency. And how did you overcome the fear? I used the anticipated gratitude technique. Before launching, I thanked in advance for the lives of all people who would be transformed through mentoring. I focused on the value I was delivering, not the money I was charging. Robert looked at the numbers. 23 people in VIP mentoring. Son, that's almost $92,000. And you know what's most incredible? I only work 4 hours a day. The rest of the time I use to study, develop myself, and create content. It's work that flows, not work that forces. But Dad, what really changed everything was when I stopped seeing myself as son of Robert who failed and started seeing myself as Luke, the specialist in breaking family patterns who learned from the greatest mentor of his life. Robert felt a lump in his throat. What do you mean? Dad, I started telling our story differently. Not as my father failed and I learned from his mistakes, but as my father invested 45 years studying how the mind works to teach me the secrets of prosperity. It completely changed my energy. Luke showed a video he had recorded. The father who transformed failures into wisdom. The real story behind my success. The video had 2.3 million views. Son, you transformed me from failure to mentor, Robert said, emotional. Dad, you were always a mentor. You just needed the right perspective to see it. Luke opened a detailed spreadsheet. Look at our financial evolution in the last 18 months. We went from zero to over $60,000 monthly. Dad, I officially became the first millionaire of the Smith family. But you know what's the most incredible part? What? I don't feel like I've made it. I feel like I'm just beginning. Because now I understand that abundance isn't a destination. It's a state of being. And you taught me this state of being. And there's more, Dad. Remember when you said your mission was to teach me, not have success yourself? Well, you were wrong. Robert frowned, confused. Your mission was to teach me and have success yourself. Because now I want you to be my official partner. I want you to systematize everything you taught me and become the co-creator of the method that's transforming thousands of families. Luke showed a partnership contract already prepared. 50% of the business is yours, Dad. You're the true creator of all this. Robert looked at the document with tears streaming down his face. At 47, after a lifetime of financial failures, he was being invited to be a partner in a $1 million business created by his own son. Son, I don't know what to say. Say you accept, because the world needs to know the complete Smith method. And who better to teach about transforming failures into wisdom than the man who lived this firsthand? In that moment, Robert understood that his journey of failures hadn't been a detour from the path. It had been exactly the path he needed to travel to get there. Each fall, each humiliation, each sleepless night studying consciousness, everything had been preparation for this moment. Father and son hugged, and for the first time in decades, Robert felt truly prosperous. Not just financially, but spiritually. He had broken the family curse of scarcity and in the process, discovered that his greatest success wouldn't be personal, but generational. The Smith family had officially broken the poverty cycle that had lasted 3 generations. And now together, father and son were ready to help thousands of other families do the same. And so we reach the end of this extraordinary story that proves a powerful truth. It's never too late to transform failures into wisdom and break patterns that limit entire generations. Robert Smith, at 45, discovered that his greatest failures were actually his greatest treasure. Each business that didn't work out, each rejected job interview, each sleepless night studying consciousness, all of this was preparation for the moment he would become the mentor his son needed. Luke Smith proved that when you vibrate at abundance frequency, when you act from inspiration and not desperation, when you focus on adding value instead of just making money, the universe conspires in your favor in ways you can't even imagine. But the true magic of this story isn't in the impressive numbers Luke achieved. It's in the energetic transformation of an entire family. Robert didn't just teach Luke to prosper. He healed himself in the process. And together, they created a legacy that will impact thousands of other families. Now I ask you, how many generations of your family have lived trapped in scarcity patterns? How many limiting beliefs about money have you inherited without even realizing? And more importantly, are you willing to be the person who breaks this cycle forever? Robert and Luke's story teaches us that transformation doesn't happen only when everything is perfect. It happens when you consciously decide to choose a different vibrational frequency, even in the midst of difficulties. You might be going through financial difficulties now. You might feel like Robert failed without perspective, thinking you've already missed life's timing. But what if I told you that maybe you're exactly where you need to be for your greatest transformation to begin? What if your failures aren't failures, but valuable data about how not to vibrate? What if your current situation is the perfect laboratory for you to develop the wisdom that will transform not just your life, but the lives of future generations of your family? Robert discovered that when you stop trying to save only yourself and start focusing on how you can serve and add value, your own salvation happens naturally. When you vibrate at contribution frequency, abundance comes as a consequence. So here's my challenge for you. Choose a limiting belief about money that you know you inherited from your family. It could be money doesn't bring happiness. Rich people are thieves. People like us don't prosper. Now, consciously choose a new belief to replace it. But don't just choose, start vibrating in it. Start acting as if this new belief were true. Use the techniques Robert taught Luke. Morning connection with your purpose, the expansion test, the value question, action without attachment. Remember, you don't need to wait to have money to vibrate at abundance frequency. You need to vibrate at abundance frequency to attract money. Energy comes first, physical manifestation comes after. And if you're a parent, understand that the greatest inheritance you can leave your children isn't money. It's a mind programmed for prosperity. It's the certainty that they deserve abundance, that the universe is generous, that there's room for everyone to prosper. Robert transformed a lifetime of failures into the greatest gift he could give his son. And you? What energetic legacy are you leaving for future generations? The Smith family broke a scarcity cycle that lasted 3 generations. They proved that with consciousness, method, and the correct vibrational frequency, anyone can rewrite their financial story. Now it's your turn. Your transformation begins the moment you decide you deserve abundance, that you're capable of prospering, that you can be the person who breaks your family lineage's limiting patterns. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue learning about financial manifestation, mental reprogramming, and breaking family patterns. Leave a comment telling which part of the story touched your heart most, or which limiting belief you're ready to transform. I'll leave a video suggestion here on the screen for you to continue your journey of consciousness expansion and financial abundance. Always remember, you deserve all the abundance in the world because you were born to be prosperous, happy, and free. Your soul chose this life to experience the joy of conscious manifestation. I'll see you in the next video.